Hey, podcast friends. This is Dr. Steve Hewlett with the podcast Simple Healthy Choices for Weight Loss, where every week we help people who have realized that as their health has been declining over the years, the number of medications they are being prescribed is increasing. We want to help you reverse this health path so you can live the vibrant, pain-free, and hopefully medication-free life you deserve to live. If you'd like even more information on this topic, you can go to Amazon or Audible and pick up my book, Your Plate is Your Fate. And if you think my book helps you on your new health path, please tell your friends and leave a review where you purchased it. Hey, welcome to another podcast. And this is going to be an interview podcast. And this interview is going to be with Angie Wiley. And I want to thank you, Angie, so much for joining me on this podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Good deal. Just so you know, Angie inspires others to stop sitting on the sidelines and become a game changer. So Angie holds a BS in education and coaching with a minor in psychology. As a previous collegiate athlete, she brings that same fierce competitive drive into her coaching and teaches that will inspire you to take action and go to the next level. Angie was an industry leader for 22 years and one of the top medical device corporations in the world in sales and in sales management. She and her late husband, Chuck, owned their own small business during this time in 2013. Angie followed her true calling and launched and began to develop You Are Strong alongside with her full-time family and career. After the passing of her husband in 2020, Chuck's question grew louder. What are you waiting for? She courageously stepped out of the corporate world in 2021 and is living her message, You Are Strong. Her program has helped thousands of athletes, sales professionals, and business leaders take action. Angie is authentic and real. She speaks from her heart and isn't afraid to share her journey to inspire and empower others. So Angie, with You Are Strong, thank you so much for joining us. And it may seem kind of different to people at first, but even though Angie instructs athletes and coaches athletes, it's not the physical coaching, it's mainly the mental coaching. And really all of us go through this mental coaching. Anytime we're trying to change from an old us into a new us, the first thing we have to do, if we don't like the results we are, is we have to change our thoughts. And that is where Angie is the strongest. So for right now, Angie, I will let you take that away and kind of tell us a little bit about what you do and how people can go about changing their habits and changing their thoughts and changing their lives.
Well, thanks. You're leaving it wide open. So obviously I have a passion for athletes. I have a passion for high performance. And I started it, part-time. I started doing boot camps for athletes locally. But when I really went full-time in 2021, number one, we were still on the heels of COVID. So I took my program online, whereas before I had been doing local boot camps for athletes, but I took it online. And, you touched on a couple things. One, changing our thoughts and our habits, and really truly the way we think and how we respond to, whatever situation we're facing is all a habit. So when I launched this, I stretched that out for 8 weeks to work with someone over the course of 8 weeks, because it takes a minimum of 60 days to really start changing our habits, regardless of what they are, whether they're mental habits or physical habits. So I have an online program where I work with athletes and sales professionals, people in business across the country, where I take them through an 8-week program. And it is all about the mindset. And, again, whether you're an athlete or you're in business or sales and you're pushing to the next level, when it comes to athletes, they say, around 80 to 90% of your performance is based on your mental game. And it's the mental part of that aspect that is either going to push us forward in, anything that we're going after, or it's going to be the very thing that's going to hold you back. And so many times it's what is holding us back. And so that's, when I start the program, we do start with the foundation of where are your thoughts. Start getting really conscious of what you're thinking about. Most adults still don't think about what they're thinking about. And the more you do that, the more ability you have to change it. And from there, we really look at your state, and we all have high states and we all have low states. And it's learning to recognize those and then understand that is coming from where our focus is. And then I share and introduce tools in order to help people really manage their state and to learn that they can control those emotional states based on their thoughts and their thinking and the stories they're telling themselves.
Okay. See, and even though we're talking about athletes, again, this is really, we're talking about anybody. If you are, say you're a diabetic and you want to get off medication, say you are obese and you just started getting on medication, you want to get off of it. All of these kind of obesity and everything, these all comes from bad habits that we've had in the past. And like Angie's saying, you have to be able to change your thoughts in order to change your habits to go towards the life that you really want. So like, what kind of examples, how do you get, what's the first step that you do if someone's wanting to go from point A to point B, get away from who they were to where they want to be? What's kind of like the step process that my listeners could maybe start thinking about as far as how they could change their thoughts or their habits a little bit every single day? Or is it a major thing they have to do all at once? Or what's the process that you bring your athletes through?
Yeah. So as I work with athletes over the course of 8 weeks, and again, like you said, to me, sports mimics life. And so, regardless of who is out there hearing this, it doesn't matter, what your challenge is or what you're going for or that change that you're trying to make in your life. It really does. It starts with your thoughts. And, I mentioned you've got to get really conscious and start really thinking about what you're thinking about, because the thing is, most of our thoughts are habits. So, about 90% of the thoughts that you're going to think today, you thought yesterday. If you don't start implementing change, you're going to be thinking the same thing tomorrow. And so when you're looking at going for change in your life, it does start with that foundational change of what is going through your head. And so when I talk in terms of athletes, it's your thoughts. So start thinking about those thoughts that are going through your head and just simply start catching yourself. Because, when we think 90% of the thoughts that we thought yesterday, unfortunately, as humans, 80% on average of those are probably negative, or they don't serve us, or they don't help us, because we are all hard on ourselves, right? And so it's starting to really pay attention to those negative things that we're saying to ourselves. And maybe you have a negative story around yourself. So let me share, so for example, I've had a college athlete who was really struggling at the college level. She had created a story in her head because so many times stories aren't real. And so when I'm telling you to think about the stories that you're telling yourself, most often that story is because it's just a thought that you've kept on thinking, and your brain takes off and your brain creates a story around it. And so I want you to challenge yourself that some of those stories most likely are not real. She had a story in regards to her coach, who was a super tough, intense coach, which is not unusual at the college level. So again, whether that's a boss for you or, whatever that is in your life. But so she had an intense coach. He was hard on her. He yelled. Typically, when coaches are yelling, they're trying to make corrections, so they may come across as negative. And she had created this whole story that he didn't like her and didn't think she was good enough, didn't think she had what it took. And so she created kind of this failure story that she wasn't good enough in her head. And the thing is, when we have stories like that going through our head, that impacts our state. And so that put her into a low state, and it hurt her confidence. It made her have more self-doubt. And we cannot create that positive change and live and perform in a high state when we have those types of stories going through our head. So I just, to the listeners out there, I want to challenge you to really, look within, and what stories do you have going through your head? And most of the time, it's a negative story, and you might believe that it's real, but it's not. And you have the ability to change it. And so when I work with athletes and we start looking at some of these negative stories, so in this instance, I was like, that coach most likely is just as competitive as you are. He's yelling at you because he believes in you. He wants you to go to that next level. He cares about you. He's he's pushing you, trying to get you to, move and to push yourself and to take those next steps. And so you can see the difference between the more of a positive story that I just created and a negative story that she had told herself. So you can look at your stories. And so, Steve, you can probably easily do this in regards to, the patients and people that you work with, and they've created stories that are going to hold them in their old patterns and their old beliefs that they have about themselves. And you have to start transitioning and shifting that belief. And I like to look at it kind of like it's climbing a ladder, because you're not going to jump from, a really low self-confidence and you're in a frustrated state and self-doubt to, okay, I feel great now and I'm confident. Like, we're not just going to jump. It's sometimes just those baby steps, right?
It's like jumping from the ground up to the roof without using the ladder to walk up there.
Right. And so it's like, you've got to just tell yourself, like, look, I'm getting a little bit better. Every day I'm making these small incremental changes and I'm moving in the right direction. I'm moving in the direction that I want to go. And when you can start changing that self-talk to, moving up that positive ladder, your behaviors are going to follow that.
And that's huge. And Angie and I were actually talking about this, last night. But a lot of times people tell themselves these stories because they find that they're comfortable where they are. And so when we say change your thoughts, that's what we're saying is change your story, because there are stories that empower you and stories that don't. And like Angie and I were talking about last night, there's so many people who look at people that they consider successful and think, oh, they were an overnight success. Nobody is an overnight success. You don't see all the work that goes in behind it. And it's the small habits that you change every single day. It's a small story you tell yourself every single day. Just like, really common ones along the nutrition field is, I don't have time to eat healthy. I don't have the money to eat healthy. There's so much information out there. I don't know what to believe as far as what's healthy. Or same thing with exercise. I don't know how to exercise. I don't have the money to exercise. I don't have the skill to exercise, blah, blah, blah. And they're all these stories, but you have to stop, like Angie said, and think about, is the story you're telling yourself, is it tearing you down? Is it keeping you back from being the person that you really want to be, that gives you that energy and that passion inside you? And if it is, change your story and don't look for any quick fixes. Change your story, get the path you want to go, and then every single day when a choice comes up, think, is this leading me to the person I want to be or away from the person I want to be? All you've got to do is think about where you really want to be and what story you're telling yourself, and how do you need to change that to empower yourself.
Absolutely.
So Angie, like, what other things do you tend to tell your clients, things that you've found that you've talked to them about that seem to really help them understand how important this is as far as changing their thoughts and their habits?
So once we really kind of get, them moving in the right direction around the way they think, what happened, the way we think, the stories we tell impact how we feel. And that will put us either into a high state where our confidence is high, we feel great, we feel like life is good, right? And then it's easy to move forward in that place. Or, when you're in a low state, maybe your confidence is down, you're frustrated, you're stressed, you're anxious. And so again, like, it's a high state and it's a low state, and we all have it. We're human, right? So we are going to have those states. Sometimes we're going to ebb and flow throughout the day. Now, those states are impacted, though, by what you are focusing on. And you have a choice, really, truly, in every moment of every day to choose what you're focused on. And so if it is, a situation where you're challenged with, eating, your focus, you're either going to support yourself or you're going to beat yourself up, right? And so with athletes, when I talk to them in regards to their focus, one, when they're in a low state, I get them to ask, okay, catch yourself first. And what was I thinking about that took me to that low state? Most likely you're in a place of beating yourself up. You're being hard on yourself. You're not giving yourself any grace for a mistake or a failure or whatever that is. And it's really important that you recognize it, because you're focused on what's going wrong. And as humans, that's where our focus tends to go, instead of, saying to yourself, okay, catching myself in a low state, but let me change my focus and what is going right. because there's so many things that go right in our life. And part of that, so controlling your focus by asking yourself questions, and those positive questions, saying, what is going right in my life? What can I feel good about right now? Because what you will find happens is when you are in a high state, you are going to move more in the direction that you want to go, right? And so it doesn't matter whether it's diet, fitness, any part of your life, you are going to perform better and you are going to show up your best self when you are in a high state. So your high state is important from that perspective. So feeling better, right? Feeling better, feeling happier, depending on what you're saying to yourself, you're going to have confidence that you're going to move in that direction or not. And so paying attention to your state is super important. One other piece of your state, real quick, I tell my athletes to bookend your day with appreciations. And I do that because when you can sit and just really feel and focus on what you have to appreciate in your life, that helps you to move up that emotional ladder and to be in that higher state, because it helps you feel better because you're controlling your focus on what you have in your life to appreciate.
Right. I agree 100%. And it makes me think just back about the example that you just said about the athlete that the coach was being hard on her. And so she was taking that to a negative state, thinking, maybe I am not worthy, I'm not good enough, maybe I shouldn't be here, all this, to where when Angie talked about changing your state, all that really means is if she changed her focus, instead of saying, oh, he's being hard on me, to changing like, oh, he really wants me to improve. If you think, if he's wanting me to improve and he's here to help me improve, then as he gives you the coaching, you're not going to look at it and say, oh my gosh, I feel bad. You're not going to listen to what he's saying because you're so busy feeling bad about yourself and feeling low about yourself, to where if you change your thoughts to saying, no, he's not cutting me down, he's actually helping me, he wants me to improve, you're going to focus more on the exact words he's saying and what he's trying to teach you so you can actually become better. So the easiest way to have your focus in a high state is to set a goal. I mean, that's kind of really the basic things to have a goal of where you want to be. And then as things come into your life, if you are starting to make little choices every single day to go towards the goal of the person that you want to be, you're going to feel better about yourself. And the better you feel about yourself, the less you're going to let other negative things come into you, because you're going to be able to quickly assess if something comes in and you feel like it's negative. You can either use that negativity to go towards the person you want to be, or just say, I don't even want to hear that, and block it out. Or if you hear something positive, you use that positive. Is that something that's going to help you become who you really want to be? So when you talk about changing your state, changing your thoughts, changing your focus, it means have an idea of who you want to be. And then all the input that comes into you every single day, you make the decision around, is that going to help me be that person, or is it going to make me go away from that person? And that's going to give you more drive and help you really truly find the passion of who you are. Anyway.
Absolutely. I like that. Well said. Well said.
So what are some other examples of things that people, just say for us, if somebody's wanting to change their old styles, their old thought processes, and that's something I know that Angie's, I've listened to some of her stuff before, talking about how changing the little bitty things that you change early, they're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And if you do something, and I was trying to think of when you're using your example of the fleas in the jar or the elephant, when you were talking about those, as far as things, what does that go into here as far as what a thing that they can use as far as how beliefs can really limit them from becoming better? How do you use that?
Yeah. So I really challenge whoever I'm working with to look at your blueprint that you have about yourself. And your blueprint really is, what do you believe about yourself? Because if you are going to be true to what you believe about yourself, right? So it's, if you believe you are good at something or you're not good at something, chances are you are going to live up to that, right? And so when we are looking at making changes, we do have to look at what are those beliefs that we have in ourselves or don't have in ourselves, because those beliefs will either, if they're positive beliefs, then they're going to push you forward. But if they're negative beliefs and you have, negative beliefs or that negative story about yourself, you are going to stay stuck. And so that is that underlying thing where you've really got to look at, what do I believe about myself? And, to a lot of people that I work with, I'm like, you might have a belief that you're a bad artist. And maybe that goes all the way back to a time when you were in the third grade and you didn't do good on a project and kids snickered at it and the teacher said something negative. And so you take all of these things around you and you create this belief about yourself, or, or maybe it is, has to do with your body image, and you were a certain way, you believed you were a certain way at one point, and you created this story about yourself. The thing is, with any of these beliefs, we have the ability to change our beliefs, but that is going to be the foundational thing that you have to work on in order to create change. Because if you're stuck in an old story and you're telling yourself something negative, but yet you're trying to go in the other direction, you've got to work on your belief at the same time that you are taking, those small actions and those small steps in the direction that you want to go. So your beliefs are just foundational to change.
Right. And like we were saying, as an example that you can think of about old beliefs and how they can hold you back, I've heard the example before of like baby elephants. And baby elephants, they're little bitty. The circus will take and stake these elephants with a small stake in the ground. But these baby elephants, they can't pull at that stake. So they tug and tug for the first, year of their life or whatever. And they realize they can't move that stake. They're stayed. But now as the elephants grow bigger and bigger, they can still be chained to that same small stake, but they aren't going to try to change, even though they could easily move their legs and take that stake up out of the ground. They don't even try because they've been told so long, when they were little, that they can't move that stake. And that's where a lot of people are. You get told these things, or you start believing these things early on in life, and you really don't realize how they're keeping you down. And so the other thing that we talk about is feelings. What really, really empowers your thoughts and your drive is when you actually put emotion to a thought. And once that emotion comes in, that's where it gets very powerful. And this could be good or bad, depending on the emotion you do. So like if you've, a lot of people like to use, bad, traumatic childhoods as reasons to keep them from going forward. However, there are a ton of people who have had horrible childhoods, and they use that to drive them forward, to a better place. So the difference when you're looking at it, past experiences, is if you've had bad past experiences, whatever those bad past experiences is, if you just only give it thought, you think about it in order to say, okay, I don't want that to happen again, and I'm going to change my ways for the future. That's fine. But when you think back about these horrible times, and then you start feeling it, and you start really feeling inside you, oh yeah, I felt like this, it's going to automatically take you to a negative place, and it's going to keep you from becoming the person you want to be. So you need to make sure if you're looking back at any kind of negative, look at it with thought and do not put feeling to it, or that's going to inhibit you from becoming the person you truly want to be. Do you agree with that, Ange?
I do. As I work with athletes, there's a space in the program even where we work on visualization. And visualization is a super powerful tool. And it is absolutely not just for athletes. But the piece to the visualization is pulling in all your senses, because you want to, so I'll touch on it here quickly because it's powerful for any of us, regardless of what you're trying to accomplish. You want to, number one, when you are visualizing yourself, you want yourself to be in the first person. So you want to see yourself as in it, whatever that is that you want to accomplish, that you want to do, you want to be there. You don't want to be like watching yourself like you're in a movie. So real time, pull those senses in. But the bigger, even more important thing that you just touched on was pull in those emotions. And I have them visualize themselves in that high state. So, so for an athlete, it's like if you've got a basketball player and they're visualizing, shooting, they're visualizing and pulling in that high state of being in flow, feeling confident, being out on the floor, that, moving the way they want to move. And the other important piece to this is because when you visualize, it is important to visualize things the way you want them to go, right? So if you are someone, that's working with Steve and you are working on diet, fitness, exercise, whatever that is, and you're visualizing yourself doing those things all right. Okay. You're feeling yourself in that high state. And this is where you have the power to start shifting that belief that you have in yourself. Because when I work with people, I tell them to pull in faith and believe that you can get to that next level that you really want to get to and start seeing yourself there and feel yourself there. But the piece that we also have to do here is we are never going to be perfect. We're human. So mistakes and failures and things like that are always going to come up for us. And the very most important piece to this is the question you need to ask is, how are you going to respond when you make that mistake? Or, because you're not going to be perfect. You may have a perfect diet and fitness plan. And the thing that you don't want to do is when that mistake happens, or if you're around a group of people and then you maybe eat something that you wish you wouldn't have eaten, don't beat yourself up on it or over it. You can visualize yourself in these places. Okay, if that mistake or that thing happens, how am I going to recover? Because what can happen is if you get down on yourself, you get mad at yourself, and you're going to be in a downward spiral of thinking again if you don't respond to that the way you want to respond. And so much working with young athletes, they do not give themselves any grace, and they all think they're supposed to be perfect. And it's just not the reality of life for any of us. And so them learning to be easy on yourself a little bit, right? Have those goals, push to where we want to, where we're going, but also know that we're human. And okay, this is how I'm going to respond if I have a hiccup. And I am going to get right back on, because it's like you have that choice of, all right, am I going to lead with my positive self-talk, or am I going to lead with negative self-talk and beat myself up? And you're either going to have an upward spiral or the downward spiral. And that's going to lead to more negative behaviors if you let your thoughts go down.
Right.
So, but that power of visualization and really visualizing yourself, getting to that next level, pulling in the belief, pulling in the emotion, like you just said, it pre-paves your brain. Your body will follow that behavior that you are visualizing in your head. So it is a very powerful tool.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think visualization is everything. And thinking about things in advance, it kind of reminds me of like when we were raising our boys when they were young and we were reading books. And there was something that came up that I thought was really neat. There's things as a parent, if you guys are parents out there and you have small children, there are things that will just happen immediately and you have to respond as a parent, whatever that may be, throwing a fit out in a grocery store or whatever. And you have to respond quickly. But there are other things that the children do that they do all the time. Use the example of grocery store again. If they act up every single time you go to the grocery store and you want them to quit, that is a chronic issue that you can figure out a solution now. Before you ever go to the grocery store, figure out a solution because you know it's going to happen. So once it happens, you're already prepared and you can handle the child or whatever the circumstance is at that time because you already knew it was going to happen and you prepared in advance. And it's a lot better and the more you do this, the better you get at thinking about ways of solving issues that'll come up. And so then when those immediate things come up that you did not plan for, you already have those brain wiring going on to help you realize better ways to take care of it. And that's the same thing that I feel like Angie's talking about is know where you want to be, know where you want to go. And if there are things that are going to be stumbling blocks, or what I love the term noble obstacle. These are obstacles that are going to get in your way, but you act like they're not really an obstacle. That's really important that I do this. Yes, I need to work out today, but I need to pay my bills. So I better pay bills instead because that's going to take up a lot of time. When really you could have figured that out a long time ago and you could actually get both of them done. So knowing where you are, where you want to be, and knowing obstacles that could be coming up in the future, like missing a basket or whatever, and you already plan in advance how you're going to react when that happens, it's so much more calming because now instead of saying, oh my gosh, now, what am I going to do now? You're like, I was ready for this and this is what I'm going to do. And so you already get your mind set in that future sense to be able to take care of whatever obstacle that comes up. And that's going to be the same with nutrition, exercise, anything like that. plan in advance. If you're going to be going to a wedding, plan in advance. If you're going to be going to, some kind of a birthday party or something, plan in advance. Know what you're going to do. Don't just all of a sudden show up there and say, oh, well, shoot, I'm starving to death and there's a bunch of cake here, so I might as well eat it. Yeah, see, if you plan in advance, you could have eaten before you got there. But just as an example, that's something that I was thinking about is, again, knowing who you are, knowing who you want to be, putting emotion and feeling to who you want to be. It's going to help you make these decisions a lot easier.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. I will talk to athletes or, whoever I am working with, but it is, to me, the importance of waking up in the morning and setting your intentions. And that is essentially what, you're saying is set those intentions for how you want to be, how you want to show up, what you want to accomplish that day. And when you do that, it's like, as you do that, you can also visualize yourself, accomplishing, those things that you are putting those intentions out for. And it makes your day go so much better, so much stronger. And you're going to feel better as you go throughout your days when you take the time in the morning to do that.
I agree. And just kind of throw in a lot of other things that I've done podcasts on also. If you can maybe not even wait till the morning to do that, but do it the night before when you think about things, maybe actually write pen to paper because that stimulates more senses in your head. If you think about these things, the things that you need to deal with tomorrow, whatever that task or thoughts or whatever you need to deal with, write those down on a piece of paper before you go to bed. And this will do a few things. One, it gets you away from the electronic things. You're not watching television, not looking at your phone. You're actually writing down. You're going to get a lot of the stress out of your head and you're going to have it down on paper. So instead of waking up in the middle of the night with all these thoughts of things you need to do running through your brain, you don't have to do that because you've already written all your thoughts down. You have those thoughts already there. And also, when you think about that stuff before you go to sleep, it's very possible that you may have dreams about that same stuff. And it's amazing how many things have been invented, how many things have been changed through people's dreams because they think about it so much. Their brain can actually give them the answers at night when they're sleeping because you've got too many other things on your brain during the day. When you're awake, you're not really thinking about these things. So whether you visualize at night before you go to bed or in the morning and you write these things down, you're going to be so much more apt to take care of whatever obstacles, even if they're noble obstacles that come in your way, and you're going to know how to deal with them so you can continue on your path to the better you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But is there anything else that you tend to talk to your athletes about or anything that we haven't talked about today that you feel very strong about as far as your thoughts, feelings, actions?
Well, so maybe just one last thing, and this is just because I was talking to an athlete earlier this morning, and she said one of the things that really did something for her in regards to looking at your habits. And when we look at our habits and things that we want to change, one, I do tell them, try to focus on just, like a small degree of change every day, right? Because once again, we want to jump to where we want to be, but that's not like the realistic path. And it's those small changes every single day. And one thing that she talked about that she was able to incorporate through the program was when I'm talking about habits, she incorporated what I refer to as stacking a habit. And so she said, even as she was getting ready in the morning, she's like, I have incorporated it into my everyday life that when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm visualizing and setting my intentions for the day. And so stacking a habit means taking something that you really don't even think about, like brushing your teeth, right? Probably most people's brains just kind of go on autopilot and go when they're getting ready in the morning. But you can take those things that you do every single day and then take these little habits that we're talking about and stack it with a habit that's already in place. So then that is one way to start really pulling in some of these incremental changes into your life that we're talking about.
I agree. And that's where I actually had a thing that I made for my boys when they were little, where I went to Lowe's and I got a picture frame, one of those frames that it's a 3D frame that you can put stuff in. And I got a piece of rope and I cut it and took the twines out, and I had the rope. Then I had one of these little twines, and then I cut that and made another one. It was smaller, and then I made another one. And basically what I was doing, I know that didn't make any sense to anybody, but what I was trying to prove to him is that an action is just an action, but it's leading to something. So if you repeat an action over and over and over again, that's how you get a habit. And if you repeat a habit over and over again, that's how you get a lifestyle. And if you continue with that lifestyle, that's going to be your destiny. So if you already know your destiny, it's going to be a lot easier for you to look at your actions and say, is this action going towards who I want to be or away? And if you can stop it when it's an action before it becomes a habit, or at least before a habit, it's going to help you a lot more. But you have actions every single day, and you have choices every single day. And the best way to get through these actions, make sure you're doing the right actions, the right choices, is know who your future self is. Who do you really, really want to be? Which is, like Andrew was saying, stacking your habits. If you know that there's a lot of good habits that you should be doing, and there's bad habits that you want to stop, learn that, you don't just automatically stop a bad habit. You've got to replace it with a good habit. Or like this, stacking. If there's something that you do every day anyway, then just say, oh, and then I'll just attach this to it. And so now you're going to start new habits, which is going to go into your lifestyle, which is going to go into your destiny of where you're going to end up being.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever.
It did. You did good. Love it.
I don't know. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to say?
Not unless you just have any last questions or anything.
I can't really think of anything, but again, Angie's business is You Are Strong, and that's what it is. It's actually helping athletes with performance. So she's actually a performance coach, even though I call her a thought coach, because, other coaches work on the physical part of it. Angie works on the thought part of it, but it's all combined together to be a performance coach. And so, Angie, if anybody, has anybody in college or in high school that's an athlete that would like to get a hold of you and learn how to change your actions, your habits, your thoughts, in your destiny, how's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, one, you can go to my website, is youarestrong.com, all spelled out, or my email is Angie, ANGIE, @youarestrong.com, again, all spelled out. So you can get a hold of me, contact me through either one of those places. And I am obviously currently working with athletes. I launch a new program almost monthly, every other month. And it naturally has just branched out into sales teams, because that is my background as well. And then also women in business. And so it just kind of keeps growing, because at the end of the day, just like we started, our thoughts and how we think all leads to performance. And it really is the same in every area of our life.
Oh, man, that is great stuff. And that's a big thing that people need to realize is just because you think something does not mean that's true. I mean, you are your own worst enemy. And so just being able to look outside and look back in at your thoughts, you really need to analyze, is this thought helping me become better, or is it keeping me from being better? So if the thought is keeping you from being where you want to be, change your thought, which we mean change your story. Quit telling yourself things that you're not good enough, you're not cute enough, you're not, healthy enough, whatever. Don't use that as a reason to tear yourself down. Use that as fuel to make yourself become better, and realize that changing your thoughts is the first thing. Because once you change your thoughts, you're going to change your feelings when things happen. And that's going to change your actions, and that's going to change your results. So if you don't like the result that you have right now, you have to change your thoughts first. And it's something you're going to have to work on every single day. But once you feel negative thoughts coming in, please change them. Change them, use them to give you strength and a burning desire to reach your passion.
Absolutely. It's the foundation.
Well, Angie, thank you so much for joining me today. And I know everybody's going to love this. This is powerful stuff if they just realize how important it is. And seriously, just if you don't like where you are, change your thoughts. So
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Angie. And thank you everybody so much for listening, and have a great week. And remember, make simple, healthy choices to live a quality life. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button below, and be sure to tell someone else who may want to change their health path as well. And don't forget, you can also purchase my book, Your Plate is Your Fate, on Amazon or Audible. And if you do, please leave a review.